And we just clocked on the top of the hour at 9. And if you just tuned in, this is Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. On today's roundtable, we want to talk about the single-digit inflation at last. But do Ghanaians feel the relief? Now, Ghana's inflation has dropped to a 9.4%. The single-digit figure in 4 years. While this is being hailed as a major milestone for economic stability, the big question remains: are ordinary households and business actually feeling the impact? Prices of goods and services remain high despite showing inflation as single digits, raising doubt about whether statistical gains are translating into real relief. Now, to help us on today's discussion, we have two wonderful guests in person. We have Mr. Jibril Fusaini. Good morning, Mr. Fusaini.
Morning.
You're welcome to Z.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Mr. Jibril Fusaini is a price expert in Ghana Statistical Service. And we also have Dr. Felix Larry Esilfi, who is a development economist and executive director at IDA. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me here this morning.
Awesome. And thank you for honoring our invitation. So, we'll just run into the conversation because we are all anxious. We want to know what is happening. A single-digit inflation figure, how does it translate into the economic or everyday life of the average Ghanaian? So I'll start with you, Dr. Isofi. Ghana's inflation rate dropped to a single digit with a 9.4. But we had similar in 2020 and 2021 where we had the 9.88 and 9.99 respectively. What are the key drivers behind these achievements or this achievement?
Okay, so once again, good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers on your social media handles.
Right.
A great question. Causes of a declining rate of inflation, right?
Right.
If you look at our economic structure, we are an import-driven economy. And so if you study the inflation trajectory of the economy and how it comes about, our inflation has mainly been the fact that it is driven by importation.
Okay.
And once imports, go higher, or once we demand more of imported goods, importers will have to import more, and to import more, they need to, spend more money to get the foreign currencies in terms of dollars, euros, or pounds, whichever, to be able to import. And whilst they spend more cedis, you see that actually increases their cost of importation. Okay. And they are not Father Christmas. So most of the time they will try to pass on the extra cost to the consumer. And that will actually trigger, an increase in the prices of goods and services within the economy. And therefore inflation will either go higher. Or if it is something that they are spending less in terms of importation, as far as their costs are concerned, then inflation will definitely, come down.
Right.
Now, that is actually the main driver. However, there are other, internal factors as well. Of course, sometimes cost of doing business in Ghana is also higher. And when producers of foods, commodities that are actually produced and consumed within the country also go higher, definitely to also contribute to that. But the main cause of our inflation trajectory, be it increasing or decreasing, is as a result of, importation of goods and services into the country.
Right. And I think that's a very good interpretation or explanation to it, because if there's high demand in goods that are imported, it means that it's also going to be high in imports.
Exactly.
And when there's high imports, it means that more foreign currencies are being spent.
Exactly.
And if the currency rate is high, it means that cost of goods and services will be high.
Exactly.
But if it's low, it means that cost of goods and services will also be low.
Exactly.
Now, how sustainable is this level of inflation now?
Okay.
And given the country's fiscal position and the global economic uncertainties, how sustainable is this?
So first of all, we need to understand something here. inflation itself, because there seems to be a lot of misconception about inflation. When it is high, what it means to the ordinary Ghanaian, and when it is low, what it means to the ordinary Ghanaian. Most of the times, those of us who have the privilege to sit on air, like we are doing this morning, to have a say about the trend or trends within the economy, I think we do a lot of disservice to the people. We don't, there is something called economic communication or research communication. When we are communicating to people, the general audience, we have economists, we have statisticians, we have laymen, and all of them want to benefit. So most of the times I try to use simple, terminologies, from the layman's point of view, to be able to get the audience, get along with us. Now, when we talk of inflation itself is the rate at which prices of goods and services actually change. Right. And the change here can either be increasing or decreasing. And when we talk of rate, to break it down and use a very layman's point, I would say the speed at which the prices of goods and services, actually change within the economy.
Right.
Now, so this particular trend that we are seeing, it looks good. Technically, it looks good. The meaning here is that prices of goods and services are still increasing, but at a slower pace. It doesn't mean that prices, once we are having a decline in inflation, automatically cost of goods and services are going to decrease. That is not what it means. It means that prices of goods and services are still increasing, but they are increasing at a slower pace. Okay. So that is what it means. So the sustainability here depends on the sort of economic management policies and programs that are in place. Now, if you look at this government, and I've said it here before, when they assumed office, they realized that, and that was the first policy call by the president to his people, especially to NAFCO, National Food Buffer Stock Company Limited, right? Yes. As at 2024, our local rice producers were having stock of rice, in their barns, and they were not having buyers. And yet the then government was importing rice to feed our secondary school students, that under the free SHS kind of policy. And I'm sure you, a media house, I'm sure you heard that even there were some sort of contaminated rice that were imported and then shared amongst the schools and all of that. Now, this president, when they came, the first thing that the first policy call was that, look, NAFCO should not import any food commodity, but buy from the local. And that in itself, people can downplay it, but significantly impacted on the importation of food commodities into the country. And that also, boosted local confidence in terms within the economy as far as farming was concerned. Now, I have just explained that one of the major contributing factor of our inflation changes is as a result of importation. So that in itself has actually contributed to that. Now, the government is also doing certain things in terms of fiscal, expenditure-based fiscal consolidation, ensuring that there is prudent public financial management and all of that. Now, all these things indirectly will contribute to that. One good thing that they are also doing, which I think they have to deepen it, is the agricultural sector. I've seen that several programs have been actually, be put in place. And the Feed Ghana project and all of that. Yeah. Those things are ongoing. I just came from the field, from Central Region, just this dawn. And when I was on monitoring, we are doing some data collection there. I realized that, God being so good, this year we may have kind of good harvest, simply because now the NAFCO is engaging, local farmers with the confidence that they are going to, buy from them. So that in itself is also contributing to that. So the sustainability would depend on how well we manage importation, how well we manage, the prices of goods and services as far as policies and programs the government is putting in place are concerned. Right. That is what will actually do the magic. Otherwise, this will never be sustainable if we fail to do that which will deepen or sustain the trajectory that we are experiencing now.
Wow, with this level of explanation, maybe we should just end this show.
Thank you.
I mean, it was very, very insightful, but we'll come again. Let me speak with Mr. Fusaini now, but we'll come back so that give us more in terms of the impact on household and businesses. Mr. Fusaini, when it comes to data and measurements, can you explain how Ghana's Statistical Service measures inflation and what specific factors drove the recent decline?
Thank you very much for the opportunity given to GSS to come to this platform.
Right.
So actually, CPI itself, we define it as the average change in price of a fixed basket of goods and services that Ghanaian households purchase over time. So if I say that, simple means the goods and services that we purchase in a market over time, definitely it will either increase or decrease. So the changes in that increase, either upwards or decrease, the CPI put it together to become an index.
Okay.
So that's the consumer price index. It's actually different from inflation. So once the index is generated or computed, putting all these differences together of all the items, then we'll be able to use that index to get the inflation, which is the rate. So basically that is what we do. We collected prices from 57 markets across the country based on the regional proportionality. The biggest regions get more markets, and then the minimum market we have per region is 3 markets. And then the highest market per region is the 6. Actually, we are making effort to increase it. So at the end of every month, price collectors collect it, the supervisors look at it very well, and then regional statisticians also look at it, forwarded it to the regional head office, and we will look at it and query whatever we have to query. Then we compute the inflation, the index. Then we will use the index actually to come out with the inflation.
Okay.
So basically this is what we do.
Right. So with this, how does the base effect and seasonal patterns influence inflation readings?
So base effect comes in because we normally compare, we have year-on-year inflation, and we have month-on-month inflation. Year-on-year inflation, last year at this particular time, September, we had CPI, which is the index for September last year, 2024. And this year, September, we also had the same CPI. So last year became base. So the moment the base is high, it affects the current year inflation because the base is high. So what I want to say here is that the base this year base will definitely going to affect next year inflation.
Okay.
Because now it's lower.
Right.
If things are not kept like the way it's going, and maybe exchange rate and other things, as Doc said, continue to escalate or other things, you see next year CPI will be higher, and comparing with this year, which is the base very low, it will let us see high inflation. So basically that's how base effect work. Month on month also the same thing. Month on month is short-term effect. That is why if you see month on month, it's not actually stable. It fluctuates because we have seasonality and all other factors that comes in. The moment last month base, something happened, and this month it has not happened, you see that kind of fluctuation in the inflation. So that's how the base actually works when it comes to inflation.
So that means it's important that our spend does not change. It's important to always have, the same level of spend, whether it's going out or it's coming in.
Yeah, so what we are trying to say is that the policymakers must make sure that whatever they are doing before the inflation is going down should continue.
Okay.
When it continues that way and everything is smooth in the system, you see the stability in price. Okay. But if it doesn't continue, and maybe fiscal discipline, maybe they relax it too much or whatever, or tight monetary policy, there's a shift or something, you see things continue to change because of the importation of inputs for agriculture or the one that they sell in the market. Okay,
all right. So, in your opinion, what are the main commodity categories that recorded the sharpest declines or increase in prices during the last measurement period?
So, if you look at our basket, actually food and non-alcoholic beverages has the highest weight, which means maybe we Ghanaians, we use most of our money on food. So a little trigger in food prices, you see the increase very sharp. So a little reduction also in food, you see inflation also actually coming down. And this month in particular, we realized there's a reduction in food prices that has actually triggered the actually low inflation. Apart from that, you look at furnitures and then the furnishes, and then the also realize a relative increase, but not too much. But non-food items like utility, electricity, and then this in realize is a little rise in inflation. But because food has almost 50% of weight in our basket, it has reduced it drastically. That's why we actually realize the low inflation.
Yeah, well, I think that the in terms of the categorization, the food inflation it's high because it's a necessity. We can't live without food. That's how come the spend or the rate is higher compared to other categories. Right? Okay,
so I can explain further in a sense that it's scientific. Before we generate our weight for the items, there's a household expenditure survey that we conduct for 1 year.
Okay.
Currently it's ongoing because we want to rebase again.
Okay.
So after that expenditure survey, we'll track household for 33 days. A numerator will be with household for 33 days and track all the expenditures that particular household spend on. At the end of the year, the entire year, we'll collect all these figures. And by collecting, we'll see how much each household spend on which category or which item. By putting them together, we'll see that, food, Ghanaians spend much on food. And we use that one actually to give weight to the various items. That's how come that we realize that food has 42.7% weight in our basket.
Right. Talk of household. Let me come to you, Dr. Esilfi. Thank you, Mr. Fuseni. So many consumers, they say that they feel it takes time for there to be a change. When there's a drop in inflation, it takes time for change in it takes time to see a change in price of commodities and services. What's your take on that?
Yes, so as I earlier said, a drop in inflation does not imply that there is going to be drop in prices of goods, of food commodities or any good or services. It is just telling you that based on good policies in the country, the rate at which prices of goods and services, especially food commodities, the rate at which these commodities are rising are slower than they were before. Now, if you are talking of prices, normally, and my colleague is here, he can also add on to that. The drop in prices will actually come. You will see that one more evidentially when it is actually in the area of the drop in the forex, like we saw in the drop or the gains that the CD made.
Yes.
So linking it to the initial explanation that I gave, importers would demand more dollars. So if the CD gains strength, it means that if you are, for example, initially, if you were to, let's say, spend like $100,000 or 100,000 Ghana cedis to just get $90,000. now that maybe inflation, the cedi has gained some sort of strength, that same 100,000 cedis, maybe you will end up getting more or less like, let's say, $95,000. So in this case, your cedi has been able to gain some strength such that instead of you getting $90,000 initially, now you are getting some 95,000 kind of
dollars, yeah.
So in this regard, linking it to cost of importation, it reduces the burden on importers. And that means that when they come, there should be some sort of drop. The prices of goods and services in the market or of imported goods will not be the same as when they were using 100,000 cedis to get $90,000, dollars. You understand? So the price will go down. That is why some of us were commenting that when we saw the prices, when we saw that the cedi was performing very well, we saw that, for example, regulated sectors of the economy, when it comes to the energy, you could see that we saw some marginal decrease in the price of fuel. If you go to the pump, initially, I think somewhere December 2024, some of the pumps were selling at 15, others 16 and all of that. It came down up to the level where some fuel stations were getting it at 10 cedis and some few pesos.
Yes.
That one is direct. And then some of us, I remember I was here with one professor, or so, one of the a senior colleague, and we were advocating that there should be a deliberate attempt, by government to regulate the food commodity sector. And it is done in many countries. I have traveled to India, I've traveled to China, and all of that.
Control.
Exactly. And then if you say control, we are in a democratic dispensation. People tend to think that government is going to marshal some muscles to impress on people to, reduce their price. That is not the case.
Yeah.
Just as it is done at NPA, when the dollar actually was performing poorly against our local currency, you could see that the NPA will sit down with the OMCs and then Jojo and come to a mutual kind of ground that will benefit them because they are also businessmen, and then the consumer will also have some sort of relief. And you could see that marginally things will happen. So we can do the same thing in other sectors. It is also being done even in the energy sector. If you look at PURC, the utility, whatever regulatory. So Ghana is not a free market economy, as people say. You understand? It's actually a mixed market economy, a situation whereby, the government has to come in, the private sector also has to come in, then there is a mutual playing, a fair playing field for both parties. The government bid is to ensure that the policies that it has put in place, consumers or the citizenry are getting a direct benefit out of that. At the same time, businesses are also getting direct benefit out of that. That is why they regulate the system. But if you let the businessmen operate loosely, profiteering agenda setting, sometimes they can even collide, and we call it collusion. You see that importers will collude with their distributors or wholesalers and what have you, and then intentionally inflate prices. So when it happens like that, that is why we say that once the cedi is performing very well, we are not seeing the changes. But inflation is a bit different. It's not direct as people think. It is only telling you that last year, as he said, year on year, maybe last year, inflation at the same period as we find ourselves, maybe inflation was somewhere, let's say 23 point something percent.
Yeah.
It means that last year, the rate at which price of goods and services were increasing was higher as compared to now. Now it's a bit slower. That is the difference.
Yeah.
So the assertion that inflation has gone down, so we have to see some reduction in price, it is not just like that. It is kind of indirect as compared to the dynamics when it comes to exchange rate, kind of trajectory.
Right, and I think that tying it to what Mr. Fuseni said earlier, if there are some of these controls, it means that the policies and other things can manage these operations.
Exactly.
And then we can still have our lower rates being sustained rather than the fluctuating.
Yes, and let me add on to this one. I have, when I started my research profession, I started at ISE. And my first boss happened to have a wife at Ghana. I'm sure you know Mrs. Osiakutu.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Shout out to Mrs. Osiakutu.
Yes. The husband was Professor Isaac Osiakutu. Was my former boss at ISE. And Ghana Saska said, because of my boss, I got to know a bit of how they do the calibrations. They do very, very robust kind of, what he said is just a summary because of time.
Yes.
However, we could have seen a better inflationary rate today as he said, if we were to have a price regulatory system in place, the price data that they use, I see it as even as inflated price figures by the traders and whoever in the market.
The on ground.
You understand? Yeah. So if there is a proper regulatory kind of system in place where all sectors we regulate prices such that businessmen and women will not intentionally inflate prices beyond the limit that they are supposed to price. Because look, I was in Central Region few days ago. I went to a place and then I went to get some rice and some a soft drink, and then the soft drink over there I bought it, I think 10 cedis. Then in the same town, almost the same level in terms of class when it comes to the restaurant, the second restaurant that I went was selling the same soft drink. Instead of 10 cedis that I bought at the previous restaurant, this time 25 cedis. I know that in marketing there's something called perceived value pricing. That is the feeling and the ambience in the restaurant, and all. They try to add it. Yeah. But here you could see that these two restaurants are almost of the same class. Just that they find themselves in a different location, and the locations for these two restaurants are also prime. Just that it's just like in Accra here, you can have, let's say, airport residential and then cantonment. These two locations are almost of the same classes, and the restaurant they will definitely have, will be at par. So how come a restaurant at cantonment is selling a bottle of malt, 25 cedis, and you come to airport residential area, that is the angle I'm coming from. Right. So price regulation is very, very key. Look, the very first time I went to India, I said I was buying some banana. I thought it is Ghana where they lift the bunch and they say maybe 30 cedis or whatever. So I was there, they say how many kilos, and I was confused. I said, what do you mean by how many kilos? So here we do it in kilos. I said, okay, give me 5 kilos. And
can you?
The quantity. Then my receiver, the person who actually treated me and handled me as a guest, was laughing at me. He said, Doc, can you eat this one? So I said, how much do you think I can buy? Then he mentioned about, was it 1 kilo or 2 kilo, because he also wanted, and then that was very beautiful. And do you know how much it was? It was just about 30 rupees. Bring it to cedis. We are in the area of pesos. You understand? The same, almost the same by view. Here I cannot talk of weight. Yesterday I was buying banana, and some it's not that big, and even the fingers are not even that attractive. The person was mentioning 30 cedis. You understand? So we need to find a way to get realistic prices, and that is why consumers actually complain as soon as they hear a drop in inflation. Because of the frustration in the system and all of that. But it's not just like that. When we get a proper price regulatory system across all sectors, especially the food sector, we will see that even the inflations that we are seeing will be more beautiful and even better than what we are seeing now. And if it so happens that it has to increase, we will get a realistic rate as we are seeing now.
And I think that this is something we can also learn from the Asian countries, because on Business Brief today we realized that from 1990 till now they've been able to maintain a single-digit inflation, and it's something that is possible. And like he said, and also like Mr. Fuseni said, if we're able to have these controls and manage our policies and all the necessary controls we can have, I think that we can still have a single digit for, if not, forever. Let's just say that.
Exactly so.
Now let's look at it for businesses, investors. How does this lower inflation rate affect them? How does it affect business operation? How does it affect investment decisions? How does it even affect borrowing costs?
Okay, so when we talk of inflation, we have two types of inflation. Several types, but the key ones that we talk about is the producer price inflation, and then we have the consumer.
Yes.
Now, normally what we talk about is the consumer. I stand to be corrected, my colleague here. But the producer price inflation is more or less about the rate at which the prices of inputs change, be it increase or what have you. And that also contribute to the consumer inflation, because once the cost of production changes either upward or downward, it will definitely.
And I think this year it recorded a downward inflation.
Exactly.
So it was also a good thing.
So in terms of businesses, we have something called core inflation. For you to see a more stable trend, you have to take away the most volatile component. And here we are talking, my colleague, Mr. What? Jibril, actually made mention of food. And it is true, if you look at the budget share of an average household in this country, the food alone takes almost about 60 to 70%, because we need to fill our bellies. And here we live like a communal kind of system, and so one household can even have nephews and whatever, all of them together. So you can have an average of about 6 to and above. You understand? So food actually takes a lot. But another key thing that also takes is also about energy. And energy also directly actually affects producers of business. As you are here, we are enjoying electricity. At the end of the month, you will see that you have to go and buy. You understand? So when the cost of energy is very high, it affects businesses. That is number one. When the cost of raw materials, especially now that we don't do agriculture to provide raw materials to the fewer industries, in the manufacturing firms in the country, most of them are even importing some sort of kind of raw materials. If it so happen, and he made mention of even input, agricultural input, is also, every agriculture is also a business, kind of person. So when the cost of importation of agricultural inputs are high, such as maybe simple machineries or even tractors, and then fertilizer and chemicals for all of that are higher, definitely it is going to affect businessmen who are in the agricultural sector, and therefore inflation will not be good to them for them. So in this regard, what we are saying is that whatever government is doing to ensure that the costs of raw materials or inputs will actually be stabilized or even go down is very, very key to our production sector. Because we complain in this country that cost of production, cost of doing business is very high. And that is why cost of even commodities that are produced domestically are even more expensive than imported goods and services. You understand? Now, poultry, local chicken is more expensive than imported one, because in their country, government is doing everything possible to subsidize, give subsidies, give tax holidays, and putting sort of policies and programs together to ensure that businesses or businessmen and women have some sort of free reign to be able to operate. When it happens like that, it will directly affect the consumer price inflation. That is very key. So your question about how does it affect businesses? Yes, it will affect businesses only when government is able to check that which increases the cost of production. Here I've made mention of cost of energy and cost of input. In terms of domestics.
So before you go to domestic, what about labor costs? Does it also have an impact?
Look, we are blessed with labor in this country. And my colleague can testify to that. They do the calibration. He can tell me, is labor part of your basket of goods and services? I mean, in terms of the producer price inflation?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, when it is his turn, he will tell us, throw more light, whether labor contributes that significantly to the producer price inflation. But here, we have a lot of labor. You see a lot of degree holders even going for reception job and all that. It tells you that we have more labor, but fewer, exactly, saturated, but fewer kind of job opportunities. So labor, in my humble opinion, may play a role, but not that significant as compared to energy and cost of inputs or raw materials. That is very, very key. Now, when you come to the domestics, I don't know if I can move on to the domestics. When it comes to the domestics, as we have all agreed here, food, everything is food. Everything is food. So last year alone, when the current president, in his State of the Nation's address, somewhere in February or March, I stand to be corrected, recounting the statistical figures for last year, that is 2024, as at the last quarter, which ended in December, cost of food commodities alone, importation of food commodities alone, is in the range of $3 billion United States dollars. You understand? Just rice and grain, oats and all of that, flour and all of that we import into the country, chicken and so forth, alone is about 3 point something billion. I think even Yemadie, Ophiles, the one that people enjoy with their TZ and Banku and the rest, alone cost about 300, is it 3 million or 300 or the 300 million? Can I stand to be corrected? I mean, it's also in the millions in terms of importation. So how can we ensure that the cost of food are cheaper? Is to increase agricultural production. That is the basic, because the more you grow, the more people tend to actually depend on that, and even you can even get access to export. So I made mention of rice.
Yes.
Now the rice sector, we are doing quite well. I will not say very, but quite well, such that as at last year, as I said, these producers were having a lot in their barns, and the government was not even buying, but they were importing. And the first direct policy call by the current government or president is that NAFCO buy from them. And that is what you could see, that now free SHS, they are not complaining of food or whatever, because there's a constant supply. You understand?
Yeah.
Gone are the days you have to wait even for the ship that is bringing the imported commodities to arrive and all, and so you see that there is a break and all of that. But you could see that is also, was a problem. But now that we are buying more from the local producers, it is helping us. But it will get to a point, if the local producers are also not supported, you see, they will not be able to meet up with the demand, and that is why we tend to even import almost everything in this country, because we cannot produce domestically to meet the local demand, let alone to even think of exporting some of them. So government, whatever is doing, and I keep saying they are doing quite well. I've seen that. When I went to Central Region, in fact I was speaking last week or so. I was here speaking against it, but I went there and I realized that some few birds are being shared within 3 months, because it takes just 3 months to grow a broiler. You understand? Yeah. So that can be done. Now, in terms of Feed Ghana, I think I will try to call my big brother, Eric Opoku, to take a critical look. After the government launched that particular program, I have not been able to see clear kind of, we always go by the lazy man's approach, fertilizer subsidy, but I have done agriculture economics at my master's level. Okay. And the little pure agric in terms of crop production that I did, it tells you that when you put fertilizer over here, it will take an average of about 2.5 or 3 production seasons before that fertilizer that you put there will completely be depleted. So the everyday fertilizer that we are importing and giving to the farmers as subsidy, where is it going? And you saw after the elections 2024, you saw that some of them some politicians have even packed some of them at their own garages and all of that and selling. Others were smuggling it and all of that. So we have to even look at a situation whereby maybe this year we increase the quantity of fertilizer supply to farmers, and then the next year we look at simple production tools. And if you go to China, you could see that even simple irrigation system, you don't need big dams. Drilling boreholes in farms or in an area and laying pipes to ensure that automatically people are able to irrigate their farms and all of that. Yeah. That is key. And in terms of plowing and what have you, because you see the tedious and laborious nature of agriculture production is so punishable that farmers cannot even cultivate beyond the studios here. They have to go by the subsistence nature, produce to feed your family and then sell the excess or something like that. But we can't do it that way. We need to think of commercializing agriculture and ensuring that farmers see agriculture as a business that they are doing for profit. Yeah. That is very key. Aside that, I think all also borders on policies, as my colleague has also alluded to. All these things will contribute to domestics having some sort of marginal gains or relief as far as prices of goods and services are concerned.
Yes, and it's amazing. I'm sure our leaders also have, this wealth of knowledge, but you sometimes wonder if there's a challenge. Maybe there's an invincible challenge that we do not see and all of that. But hopefully be able to see some of these measures being taken and policies that can give us that strong control that we need as an economy. So let me come to you, Mr. Fuseni. Yes. Again, when it comes to the drop in inflation, there's a public perception. Dr. Isofi mentions, but I also want to know from GSS point of view about the perception from consumers or the the average Ghanaian, that when inflation drops, I also want to see a change in price. And what's your take on that?
So thank you very much. Before I touch on that, I want to revisit something he said about the price variability and then how prices of food should be regulated. And that maybe scarcity, some people at times adjust their food prices in a way so that we don't get the real price.
Yeah.
He made a comment like that.
Yes.
And I want to categorically say that there's a methodology, international standard that we follow.
Okay.
When it comes to price data collection, SASCA service follow consistency. Consistency means the same market all the time. Once you rebase, you don't change the market.
Okay.
You don't change the outlet. So if I'm visiting Hussein Jibril outlet, collecting price of maybe tin of sugar or milk or tomato salsa, I don't change the outlet. It's only you that I take it from.
Okay.
So that has addressed, he's buying maybe something somewhere and he has gotten to another place and the price has changed. We do that because once you change an outlet, that means outlet means store or where you are taking the price from. Once you change it, you might not record the real price change. Because I might be selling my own 5 cedis, another person might be selling it maybe 6 cedis. So if I come this month and my store is closed or I'm not available and I decide to go to another person's outlet to take it, I'm going to record 6 cedis instead of my 5 cedis, which will indicate as if there's a price change. So we follow strictly that measure to make sure that whatever we record is actual price change. Also, if I'm taking tomatoes like salsa, it's a brand, and I come and salsa is not there, I don't have to go and take Gino and take Gino's price. Because the moment I change the brand, then it means I'm going to record Gino's price instead of salsa, and it will show as if there's a price change. Meanwhile, there's no price change. So always you maintain the brand of item that you are collecting throughout the 5 years before we rebase. So the methodology has addressed his worry about maybe different outlets are selling things differently. For that matter, if you change it, there will be price change. So to come back to your question, actually he said it all already, that CPI actually, it doesn't actually measure the price level itself. It is a change in price. So people might think that already price is already high in our markets. So people might be thinking that, oh, because we've recorded single level inflation, the price must come downwards. Actually, some might come, some might remain the same, and some might also go higher. But the single digit inflation shows that there is a stability. There is a stability. Unlike, let me compare late 2022 and early 2023, where we record inflation rate above 40%. At that particular time, if you want to buy something like a margarine tin of sugar in the morning, 5 cedis, and you are not able to buy, by the time you go to the office and come back, that 5 cedis, you have to actually top it up for you to be able to buy. By the following morning, if you are not careful, you have to top it up before you be able to buy. So there's totally uncertainty. You can't plan, because if you are going to plan with the money you have, you'll be disappointed. People may go to farm gate to go and buy things and come and sell retailers. By the time they get there, the price has increased, the farmers increase it. So everybody was just increasing prices, let me say, anyhow at that time. When we have inflation 40 to 50%. But the single digit means there's assurance that there will be that kind of stability where when policy makers continue to go by what they are doing, I can see that for some months, things will remain stable. In that case, you'll be able to plan and plan very well with what you have in your pocket. At times, you can even have something left in your pocket, as he's saying, indirectly way or direct way. Because there's a price stability, even last 2 or 3 months, my route coming to Accra here, I pay intercity, I pay 70 cedis. But last 2 months, I got there, I wanted to pay 70 cedis. They said, it's 60 cedis. I was surprised. So 10 cedis has remained in my pocket, and since then, I've been paying 60 cedis up to now. One time I was going for a program at Kufridwa, and I go to Medina here, I want to pay commercial car. When I asked of price, I asked ordinary person before I wanted to pay. I said, how much are they collecting from here to there? The person said 50 cedis. But eventually, when the person wanted to collect the money, he said it's 48 cedis. Do you understand?
Maybe he just round it up for you.
So actually, no, all of us. So people were shouting like, "Oh, you've reduced it for us. You've reduced for us." So 2 cedis has remained. So that kind of stability, we'll continue to see it when we have single digit. But it's not like because price we have recorded single digit, the price should begin to reduce of the items as people are thinking. But the actual thing is that there's going to be a stability and people will be able to plan. When inflation rate is high, there will be total uncertainty. You can't plan with it because by the next time you go here, there's change in price. How do you plan when you are not aware what will happen next time? But when there's single digit, that kind of stability is there where people can plan for tomorrow, for future, because they know that things will not change. Investors will be comfortable, confident that, oh, if I'm investing in this economy because of the price stability, I'm going to make some profit out of it. Do you understand? Businesses actually will expand their businesses because at the end of the day, they know that there's a stability. But if you continue expanding your business wherever and then there's no kind of stability, at the end of the day, your business will rather collapse. The loans that you've gotten, you can't pay back. So we want our households and other people to know that when GSS come out with inflation figure to be single digit, it's not like previously price is 30 cedis and now it's 70 cedis. It should go back to 30 cedis. No, that is not what we are saying. We are saying that the rate at which the prices are changing, you will no longer realize that. It will take a longer period before you see a price moving from where it is now, which is 70 cedis, to another stage. But not that it should come back reversely for you to see that, oh, I've gotten to the market and something that I'm buying this time like this, it should be. It can also happen anyway, but it's not automatic that it will happen. But single digit is the stability that is going to give us.
Okay.
I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, I think you have, and I'm happy that you also mentioned that what GSS also does to just keep the consistency
exactly
in terms of the
that
data
is what
collection from these various outlets.
Exactly, everything. Even it comes to a point that if you are weighing tomatoes in the morning, you started weighing maybe a heap of tomatoes in the morning, make sure that anytime you go, you weigh it in the morning. Because if you weigh this month in the morning and following month you weigh it and price it, if I say weigh, you weigh and price it in the evening, the price difference might come, which might not be real. Because in the morning it look fresh. In the evening, maybe because of the way it's going, the person might decide to heap it, or because people are not buying, so let me heap it so much so that at the end of the day, people buy it and I go home. So we keep those consistency to make sure that whatever changes we are realizing, it is real.
Right. Let me come to you, Dr. Isilfi.
Yes.
So when it comes to market, the policy and the market dynamics, in your opinion, what role does the monetary and fiscal policies play in achieving this decline? I think you mentioned it a bit, but if you can just emphasize on it for me.
Yes, so policies are meant to bring stability in the economy. And so if there are good policies in place, government ensuring that they are not borrowing excessively, such that they crowd out businesses, which will lead to cost of borrowing. And when cost of borrowing also goes higher, there will be some sort of unemployment, because people will begin to lay off workers because they cannot expand or even manage whatever they are currently managing and all of that. So in terms of fiscal policy, government's ability to mobilize or ensure that there is proper fiscal consolidation, either revenue based or expenditure based, is very, very key, because that also contributes to the real dynamics within the economy. It's very, very key. Now, I've made mention of excess borrowing. If this, you can see that this government is being a bit strategic in terms of borrowing. In fact, they are not even going to the international market. They have been playing around domestically, ensuring that they are able to borrow, and at the same time also be mindful that they don't crowd out domestic business. Is very, very key.
Right.
And then if you look at the previous administration, they were printing excess money. Bank of Ghana was in disarray. Government will just go for Bank of Ghana to fund, and then it got to a time they illegally printed excess, currency, to the extent that we entered into a trajectory of what is called hyperinflation. That's 54 point something %. I don't know. It's time to be corrected. And then until IMF came in, and then they have to discipline us for us to be cautious. And now they brought it to somewhere 23 point something before they left office. And this government has come because of you see, some of these things that we are seeing, I think it's also, we can't downplay the role that IMF is playing.
Right.
Our economic managers become disciplined whenever they are under IMF program. If you remember, the actual administration, when they came to meet IMF program. So you see that their first term, there was almost clear stability within the economy. You made mention of 2020.
Do you think they had certain policies that's controlled their
Of course,
service?
they are checking your expenditure.
So the control is very key.
Exactly. So as for control, look, you cannot allow people to behave freely. Human beings are naturally selfish beings. As we sit here, let there be some sort of cash on the table. You will try to maximize your opportunity, whilst I also try to maximize my opportunity. So at the end of the day, you will see that there will even be chaos at some point,
If there's a no theft policy.
Exactly. So so the point of the matter is that the control, whenever our economic managers are under IMF program, also plays a very key role. I am not too fascinated about the role that whatever policy that this government is putting. I'm not saying that they are not doing it. They are doing something good. However, the real test of time will come whenever, at the time that we are out of this IMF kind of program. Because now, the borrowing trajectory is being controlled by IMF, because you have some sort of indicators or benchmarks that you are supposed to fulfill. I think just a week ago, they came for, I think, the third quarter review.
Yeah.
So there are some sort of benchmarks that the government is actually, forced to play within. That is very, very key. So fiscal side, this government is doing well. I made mention of Public Financial Management, Act, and then improving revenue mobilization through digitizing tax collection and all of that. And these days, we don't have a choice. We the business, because if I'm going for a contract, they will require what is called tax clearance certificate, and I have to pay. And immediately I pay, and this time even we pay via the government this e-platform of the government. You understand? And so even some, you will know, of course, the rate at which some staff within GRA will even take money from businessmen and then manipulate something and get them the certificate has also reduced marginally. You understand? So that is very key at the fiscal side. Now, the monetary side, Bank of Ghana, he made mention of tight monetary policy regime. It's very, very key. And that is also what is contributing to the magic. Because the Bank of Ghana has remained very, very tight and disciplined to ensuring that there is no excess liquidity within the market system, and also ensuring, more or less, there's more. We are currently within the range of equilibrium. That's what Bank of Ghana is doing. And then the last thing I will say is that you see that deliberate intercourse between the fiscal policy management side and then the monetary policy management side. That is also playing a very key role. In the actual administration, you will see that the finance minister was left to do whatever he wants. And then along the line, the Bank of Ghana, the Bank of Ghana will have to, coerce to work in sync with what the finance ministry was doing. And so you could see that sometimes we even ran at a shortage, and then the Bank of Ghana was forced to print money at even beyond the level that the law actually requires them to fund the government at that time. But this time you could see that deliberately the Bank of Ghana is able to caution the fiscal management aspect of the economy, and the fiscal management aspect of the economy is also able to caution. So that intercourse between, or that coordination between them is also helping for us to see whatever we are seeing now. So like we have all agreed, I think my colleague also made mention of that, is that whatever they are doing good, for which we are experiencing this kind of stability within the system, ought to be deepened. But they shouldn't renege. And like I said, is it because we are under IMF? That is why the government is doing the right things? And therefore, after the IMF program, we'll go haywire and then embark on borrowing spree, and then expenditure, uncontrollably done. We need to be mindful. So for me, the right test of time will come at that particular time. Now, one thing I will also try to draw the government attention to look critically at is the type of expenditure that they have been embarking on. So far, majority of the expenditure that they have been embarking on has been consumption based. If you look at the free sanitary something, it's consumption. That money goes and doesn't come. And I have said it here time and over that if I were to be the government, I would rather invest that 600 million Ghana cedis into a plant, bringing the local business that can manufacture sanitary parts, and then we set up a plant. That particular plant would have, created a lot of jobs in the first place, and then we also reduce the cost of importing these sanitary parts, and then ensure that we get some even to feed our young girls in school, and then even sell the remaining also to generate some sort of revenue. And that same plant will also pay taxes and all of that. Right. And maybe that can be the long-term plan. But I think something deliberate ought to be done in that particular arena. Okay. Then the free, stress-free school fees, something. Yes, some of my colleagues argue that, but that is investment in human capital. It's true. But the point of the matter is that what kind of human capital are we creating? Yeah. You understand? That human capital will become more beneficiary to the country only whilst government is funding that stress-free at the first year tertiary level. We are also looking at the kind of curricula that we are using to train the student. Not that lecturers rush to complete course outline, and then students will run after past questions just to pass their exams. And when they come, my colleague will have to train them before about 6 months before they can use them to do anything technical. We need to take a critical. But for now, I will say that you can partially see that also as more or less like consumption, because where we are now, I think we those things is like cutting our coat beyond our size or whatever, right, or the size of our textile. But maybe big push is coming. Let's see, because capital expenditure is very key at this critical moment, and we need to strategically look at that. It shouldn't be just roads. The roads should be strategically be placed to link agriculture or farming areas, and then the urban centers is very, very critical. But in terms of whatever the fiscal and the monetary policy aspect are playing, I think that coordination is actually what is doing the magic. Right.
I have one last question for Mr. Fusema before I come to you. Dr. Esofi, what do you think that with a single-digit inflation, how would it affect BOG in the looking at the future interest rates decision? How can it impact BOG in their decision? I
think it is the other way around, because because that
BOG rather impacts inflation.
BOG is what their activities actually impact inflation. So, like he said, the tight monetary stance that they have taken, because one of the tools that every government uses to curtail or to manage inflation is the monetary policy aspect of the economy. because you see, the BOG is not just to regulate the financial market, but it's also to ensure that they regulate the amount of liquidity within the system. Right. So they mostly embark on something called sterilization. When they see that there is excess liquidity in the system, they sterilize the system to ensure that they take the excess liquidity, because when excess liquidity remains in the system, demands go higher. And when demands go higher, you will see that you have a lot of money chasing fewer goods. And your basic economics, when demand is excess, there is a shoot up in supply is lower than demand, and so there is excess, there is shoot up in prices or whatever. So that is what the BOG stands to do. So that regulation is actually what is helping us see the single digit.
Yes,
that
but if they use a regulation to, achieve a single digit inflation, it means that they're going to go back and look at what did we do to achieve this level of inflation. So then they would look at how they can sustain and have additional regulations to support that. So in a way, in terms of decision making, they're also going to still look back at what we did in order to achieve that.
So that's why we are saying that whatever good that they are doing, they have to deepen it. Deepen it means that they have to improve and even maintain and then improve it the more, because it seems to be the right path that we are taking. Because look, every economy, be it household or businesses, stability is the key. And he was talking about stability in terms of planning. Even households, you see, if there is stability in prices of goods and services, you know that at the end of the month, when you receive your salary or your income, you know that this amount is what I use on food. This amount is what I use on communication. But like he said, if today you go and then the price is, let's say, 2 cedis, the next few hours you go, it is maybe 3 cedis. How do you plan? Your salary is coming and then you are not even stable in your mind as to how much you can invest to get the same quantity of item that you need in order to sustain your household. The same thing applies to businesses. So whatever they are doing in terms of that tight monetary stance that they are taking is very, very key. Of course, the caution here is that they should also overdo it to increase, cost of borrowing. I mean, you spoke about interest rate and all of that. When they siphon a lot of money from the system, what it means is that the cost of borrowing becomes very higher, and therefore, it will also become a kind of a negative impact on inflation.
That's great. Before you give us your last word, so Mr. Fusaini, is Ghana Statistical Service confident that there will be a single digit inflation in the coming months?
So GSS will continue to do what we are doing. We'll make sure that our data collectors actually collect data using the right means. If I say the right means, accurate data. We, those who are analyzing it, will also look at it critically, and whatever we are supposed to criticize, calling them back, query here and there, we'll do exact that. But as he said, I'm just encouraging and praying for all the policymakers. Already they are doing well, because I could just imagine, as he said, energy said that if those regulatory bodies are not there, like PRC and other things, because you could hear at times that they say they are going to increase it by 300%. By the end of the day, they come in to actually negotiate and regulate those things, and you see some 10-20%. Let's assume they are not there, and it's increased 300%. And another time increase 100%. Where are we going to be? So I'm just saying that they are doing well, but they should actually study the system critically and make sure that what they are doing before, it's not easy to come by a single digit. That is why in Africa, as we said, developed countries, their inflation is very, very low. Because of that, they can plan. You can buy a vehicle and you are sure that by the next 5 years you use the same amount to buy the same vehicle. But in our part of the country, it's not like that. So I'm just encouraging them to continue. Once they continue, we are going to experience single digit for long. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so let me take your last word. So if you can speak to us from the leadership perspective, what, in your opinion, should our leaders do in order to maintain, even though you've given us one point or another, Is there anything else you think the leaders can do or should do in order for us to still keep or maintain our single-digit inflation?
So surely, we have a lot of challenges that they have to do. So actually they have to sit up. Because when it comes to agriculture sector, as at now, we still rely on natural rainfall to have a bumper harvest. Meanwhile, the irrigation, and we have a vast land that we are not making good use of. And food is our major contributor factor to inflation. So actually, if maybe irrigation, if they try to bring on board irrigation so that they make use of, like northern part of Ghana, they have only one season because relying on the rainfall. Secondly, like fiscal discipline that he's talking about, it has own disadvantage too. When those things happen, people say, oh, and the tight monetary policy, there's no money in the system, but we have to survive. If they want to control inflation too, we have to survive. So at the point, they will become fed up and say, hey, Ghanaians are complaining too much, let's lose it. But if they want to lose it, at least they should ease it with some level of, they shouldn't just leave everything because maybe all Ghanaians are complaining, so that we can plan, investors will come in, businesses will use stable environment and then do business, expand their businesses. That will bring more job, more employment for our people to get. So at the end of the day, I think these are the things they should actually look at, particular agri sector. And then the exchange rate actually impacts on inflation a lot. As I said, even agriculture inputs, when you import them very low for a long time, it has effect on agric. Do you understand? But if someone input with a very high price because of exchange rate, the moment he harvests, he has to also increase it in our market, and then everything continue to jump. So at the end of the day, all these sectors, they are doing well, but I think there's more room for improvement.
Thank you so much. There is more room for improvement. What about you, Dr. Issouf, your last words? I want you to speak to the average Ghanaian.
Okay.
You have a single-digit inflation. And from what you shared, it's not that today, because we have a single digit, it means that prices are going to drastically change and all that. What would be your advice to us?
Okay, so as we have already said, a single-digit inflation implies that prices of goods and services are increasing at a slower pace. In this case, we have somewhat level of stability within the system. It doesn't mean that we are in complete stability, but the stability here is more as compared to maybe previous year, same period. And so the understanding here is that we shouldn't expect that as soon as we have single-digit inflation, everything must go down as we always perceive. And I think it is some assertion or something that has been planted in our mind by our politicians, because sometimes they say inflation just to win political vote and all of that. But I think scientifically and technically, what it implies is that yes, we are enjoying some stability, as we have all spoken about. But just to add on to what he just said in his concluding remarks, we need to improve agricultural production efficiency, technical efficiency, managerial efficiency, resource use efficiency, and economic efficiency. What it means is that, look, the things that we have been doing through tedious and laborious manpower, we need to find a smart way of doing it. And that is where I talk about bringing smart input, simple tools and equipment to help farmers become more efficient in their production activities. These days, yesterday I was watching some TikTok video, and just for slashing, now there is this mechanized kind of, you even stand and then you just, and it weeds very nice. Some of these things we need to, our politicians should think of, or our policymakers should think of bringing more. Or these things, they are not skyrockets, or they are not rocket science. You can just empower the local artisans to be able to do it. And that will also reduce the cost of, because maybe if you import, if you don't subsidize, it will be more expensive, and then the average farmer may not be able to afford that. But if we're able to bring in, or we can even send some few of our artisans to China to go and learn some of these things. You understand? Or we bring Chinese kind of technical men to come and join hands with our local artisans. Burkina Faso is doing that. Niger is doing that. These Saharan countries are doing that. And it is really helping them. Exactly. You understand? So we need to find a smart way. This one-way approach, and I think it's also a cash-making cow or cash cow for them. Fertilizer subsidy, every government comes, government after government, fertilizer. Too much fertilizer even in the soil becomes toxic to plants. You understand? And for me, planting for food and jobs, some of my enumerators were part of the people who went to collect data on that. And when they tell you the things that they saw in the field, it was so appalling that government's resources were being utilized in that manner. The farmers even connive with some political officials at the district and the local level to take these things, haul them somewhere, and even send them across to the near,
so there's even a bigger
exactly. So in this regard, you could see that it was just a cash cow for some people. Let us become more efficient in our food production. We should love what we grow what we eat, and eat what we grow. That is very key, and that is what is going to tackle our import, induced inflation issues that we normally face. Number two, policy. Yes, too much tightening of monetary stance will actually crowd or leave businesses unfunded. And so that equilibrium, that efficient level, that will make sure that there's the normalized amount of liquidity in the system, such that businesses can get the required capital that they need to improve on their operations and even expand. Economies of scale, where they can expand, produce more at a cheaper cost, and sell also at a cheaper price, is very, very key that we need to look at. Energy is very, very key. Energy. And I have heard that government is looking at TOR. It's very, very important, because if TOR is revamped, we will not drill oil, the crude, send it abroad for them to refine, and then we send hard-earned dollars to go and buy them. But if we have our own refinery, the amount of fuel that we require for domestic consumption, we can treat them here, and the rest we can talk about it in terms of exporting the crude or even selling excess, refined oil outside. We can talk about it. It's very, very key. Electricity, good for this government. They have been able to stabilize it no matter the situation we find ourselves in. But still, the cost of energy is very, very expensive for businesses. Yeah. And if we really want to sustain the inflation that we are enjoying and even bring it down further, Ghana, we can bring it even up to a level of 5. We can do that if we really so determine. If government do the right thing, right policies are in place, and we ensure that we curtail our desire to import almost everything in the economy for local consumption, and we try to ensure that we domesticate our manufacturing aspect and then produce what we consume and consume what we produce. I'm sure we're going to get there, and there will be fair and even more better stability than what we are enjoying now.
Yes, and I think it's key that you're speaking passionately about the energy, sector and all that, because it's one of the reasons that has caused a lot of businesses to close down, because there's so much high expense or overhead costs, and then there's less of revenue, so exactly. it's sort of like trumps their profit margin. But I think for you've literally given us your last word on both the average Ghanaian and to leaders as well. Yeah. That as Ghanaians, we should, find a smart way of doing what we do. And then also for the leaders to increase the skilled labor, even if it means taking people out to countries that have more, who are more advanced exactly. in terms of the skill. And thank you so much, Mr. Jibril Fusaini, and thank you, Dr. Isilfi, for joining us this morning. And that was Mr. Jibril Fusaini, who is a prize expert in Ghana Statistical Service, and Dr. Felix Larry Isilfi, a development economist and executive director at IDER. Now, to our cherished listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. My last word to you today: whatever you find yourself doing, may it be blessed. And see you again tomorrow at 6 a.m. I am Ajo. Enjoy the rest of your day.